Oh, yeah, I think it has started. Yeah, started. Okay, so we have seen till this point. So wherein, so we started with primary ledger. So then we created a business unit, and then the inventory organization. Okay, and then we created one item class, and we created one item with it. Okay, so all these prerequisites are completed. So the final one that we have is that supplier. Okay, so we'll just complete this supplier creation part. So I'll not go into deep because this supplier creation or the supplier data migration will be handled by finance team because they will import in terms of handling this, setting up the data migration strategy or having the data imported into the application. So all those activities will be handled by the finance team. Okay, so but to have the knowledge, so what we have it as a supplier creation screen, or how do we do the activity in terms of data migration? So we'll see. But this activity will be carried over by the functional, I mean the finance functionality.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so once the supplier creation is done, so then we are good with the prerequisites. So we can start with our procurement configuration. Okay, so now I'll go to procurement. Here it is here. Okay, so this is the place where we create suppliers. Okay, so now, so there are two, sorry, I think this does not have access. Let me give access. Okay, so this is first thing, that is giving access to this particular user. So now I have given access uh, to two roles basically. So one is buyer and the other one is supplier manager. Okay, so these are the two roles that we'll have to give access. So I'll just give the data access, and then we have something called procurement agent, so which is part of the procurement setup. So I'll just talk about that. So when we see the procurement related setups. So you just try to log out and log in once. Yeah, so now we have this access to create supplier. Okay, so this is the screen. So where we create the supplier. So let me call this ERT technologies. And here, if you see, so there are two things. So one is prospective and the other one is spend authorized. So now the prospective is something that it's kind of a negotiation which we are having with the supplier. So this supplier will not have the actual transaction in the system. So wherein we would have got this quotation or the quote from the supplier, but then we don't know exactly whether we are continuing business with this particular supplier. So at this point, what I will do is that so I'll create this particular supplier as prospective. So now spend authorized is the actual supplier who will have the transaction in the system. That is to create the purchase order and release the purchase order to the vendor. All those things that we can do it using this option called spend authorized. Okay.
Okay.
So now since we wanted to create a purchase order, so I'll use this supplier as spend authorized. Okay, so these are like the classification. So as a standard, we can select corporation and say create. Okay, so here if you see, so there are a lot of informations that we can see. So that is about the organization, so when it was started and the customer number and their website and additional information I want to capture. So all those things I can do, including my product and services and the way, I mean, the type of business that they are doing. Okay, all those things. So these are completely optional. So what we will look at it is that so the transaction tax. So if we are talking about India scenario, so which means our GST. So that is what we are referring to transaction details. Okay, sorry, transaction tax. So now here there are two things that we'll talk about. So one is the tax registration, and the other thing is that the applying this particular tax. So which means that tax classification code. So let's say I want to apply IGST 5%. So I can directly apply here. So which means if I select this particular supplier at my PO screen, so automatically tax will be calculated for IGST 5%. Okay, so this is kind of an option to default this tax and also for the withholding. So withholding is nothing but our TDS tax. Okay, so for these two, so this is the option that we have. And payment again, this is related to finance, so it is the payment method and the bank account. Okay, so now this is the one where we enter the supplier address. So if I just give add, and here I can just give the name. So let me select this as United States. Okay, so the style will get changed. Okay. Yeah, so that's about it. So the next one that we have is that creation of site and these things. So for this, I will need access, or I will need this particular setup to be completed, that is procurement agent, because the supplier creation, if I'm an implementation consultant, or if I'm an what do you call the, I mean, of course, the implementation consultant will not be able to create it, but if this implementation consultant is created as employee in the test environment I'm talking about, but in production, implementation consultant will act as a person who will do the setups or the configurations in the system. Okay. So now, if I want to probably create this supplier, or I wanted to allocate a person who will create this supplier, so I can do that. Okay. So now here, if you see, so this person can create suppliers, but if I want this person to create the supplier site and the assignment, so site here it is nothing but the address. So let's say I have office in Anna Nagar and my second office is in let's say Nandanam or somewhere in T Nagar. So now my address one will be in Anna Nagar, okay, so for which I'll have one site, and my site two would be T Nagar, so for which I'll have the second address, okay. So this is what we are referring to sites. So now the site assignment is nothing but I'm giving access to a particular business unit. So now the business unit that we created is Supremo. So now in the assignment screen, I'll give access to the Supremo unit. Okay. So that's what about the supplier. So we'll talk about this site and the assignment when we see the procurement related setups. Okay. So before we start our PO, that is purchase order.
Okay. So we talked about the GST thing, right? So if the supplier
Yeah.
is present in different states and
Yeah.
he is supplying the goods on belonging to the different verticals.
Correct.
So wherein the tax will be different, right? I mean the GST rates
Correct.
will be different.
Correct.
So for one supplier,
Yeah.
I'll be configuring only one supplier here. So where I can maintain these different GSTs for different verticals. Is it like I can create so many suppliers with the same name and
I mean the GST number or the tax rates.
tax rate?
Yeah, tax rate, we have separate module called Fusion Tax. So wherein we will create the regime, we will create the tax rates, and we will write a rule saying that if this is the location, I want this to be generated. But if at all
Uh,
I have a requirement wherein I will have to map it at my supplier level. So for that I'm saying, so there we have option at the profile. But usually, as a practice, we will write tax rules in order to generate this. Because here, if you see, so there will be a scenario so wherein I might have this GST tax as IGST, or I might have this as an CGST and SGST, which
yeah.
means if the customer and supplier has operation in the same state, which means that I'm going to generate CGST and SGST. So now the way that I will write rules is that, so if this is within the state, generate CGST and SGST. So I'll have to write two rules for totally I'll write three rules basically. So rule one and two will be same. Only the rate will change. So I'll give the same criteria as location, and I'll say generate CGST for this and generate SGST for this. So now I'll write the third rule saying that if location is different, generate IGST and I will give the IGST rate also. So this is how basically we will write rules, but if at all there is a requirement wherein this particular supplier is located in, let's say, Hyderabad, but the business unit that is being in operation is in Chennai. So now I know very well this is IGST. So for that scenario, we can attach it here. If not, we will have to handle it at the tax rules.
Tax rules, it's a part of again different module. Tax
Yeah, yeah, finance related to
finance.
finance. So
Okay.
we'll have that actually.
Okay. Fine. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so that's about the supplier. So the next thing is that, so we'll start with the procurement configurations. So I'll start with the business functions. So I'll change the offering to procurement. Okay, so here the structure and the organization, that is structure meaning the chart of accounts, ledger, and all those things we have seen, even the business unit creation and assigning the business functions. So all these things we have seen. So including this item organization creation and this thing. Yeah, I think we have seen this also. Yeah, right. So now we have created these things. So I'll just directly go to this thing called the categories. So firstly, so what exactly is category or why do we use category is that, so category basically defines my item. So if you remember, so when we created this item, so with item class, so we basically assigned the existing categories from the list of value, but we did not create new categories. So we said that we will create when we see the procurement module, right? So so here
Yeah.
the first thing that I have is that this category. So now this defines what kind of item I'm actually trying to purchase, or probably I'm trying to do the transaction. Okay, so now for example, so let's say I am procuring this item as an raw material component. Okay, so now I wanted to classify this item. So let's say I am procuring this coconut oil, so for as an ingredient for my finished good. Okay, so now this coconut oil, maybe I can give a naming convention saying, so this is my item to be purchased, and under that I can have this as a raw material, and under the raw material, so probably I can have the sub classification. Okay, so now the way this will work is that, so this is the navigation, that is functional area catalog. So combination of this categories, we call it as a catalog. Okay, so whatever we are seeing here on the screen, so this is what